The door creaked open, and I froze, shirt halfway over my head, heart slamming against my ribs. Mr. Callahan. Tom stood there, his broad frame filling the doorway of the guest room, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt like a lightning strike. That look, raw and unreadable, seared itself into my soul. And even now, years later, it haunts me like a song I can't unhear. It was the summer of 2015, in a sleepy Virginia town where the air smelled of honeysuckle and secrets. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and spending the weekend at my best friend Jake's family lake house. Jake and I had been inseparable since we were kids, two skinny white boys with dreams bigger than the Blue Ridge Mountains. We'd sneak beers, talk about girls we didn't really want, and pretend we weren't both hiding something deeper. That weekend, though, everything changed. Jake's dad, Tom Callahan, was the kind of man who commanded a room without trying. A former Marine, now a contractor, he had a rugged charm, graying hair, sharp blue eyes, and a jawline that could cut glass. He was 42, a widower since Jake's mom passed a decade ago, and he carried his grief quietly, like a weight he'd learned to balance. I'd always admired him, maybe too much, but I chalked it up to wanting a father figure. My own dad left when I was 6, and Tom's steady presence filled a void I didn't like to name. That afternoon, Jake and I had been swimming in the lake, laughing and shoving each other off the dock like we were 12 again. The sun was high, the water cool, and for a moment, life felt perfect. Back at the house, I'd gone to the guest room to change out of my wet trunks. The door was cracked, but I didn't think much of it. Jake was in the kitchen, and Tom was supposedly out fixing the boat. I was wrong. When Tom walked in, I was half naked, water still dripping down my back. His eyes didn't waver, didn't apologize. They held mine, then drifted, just for a second, across my chest, my stomach, before snapping back up. "Sorry, Ethan," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Didn't know you were in here." But he didn't move. Not right away. The air thickened, charged with something I couldn't name but felt in my bones. Then he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there, breathless, my skin burning where his gaze had lingered. It wasn't shame, it was something alive, electric, terrifying. I'd known I was gay since I was 14, but I'd buried it deep, especially around Jake's family. Small towns like ours didn't take kindly to difference, and I'd seen what happened to kids who didn't fit the mold. But that look from Tom, it wasn't disgust. It was something else, something that made my heart race and my mind spiral. Dinner that night was torture. Jake rambled about college plans while Tom grilled steaks. His movements precise, controlled. Every time he glanced my way, I felt it again, that heat, that unspoken question. I told myself I was imagining it. He was straight, a man's man, the kind of guy who'd never crossed that line. But when he passed me a plate, his fingers brushed mine, and I swear the world tilted. "Ethan, you okay?" Jake asked, snapping me out of it. His brown eyes narrowed, oblivious but curious. I nodded, mumbling something about the heat, and shoved a forkful of food in my mouth to avoid talking. Tom didn't say much either, but his silence felt heavy, like he was holding back a storm. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room was too quiet, the memory of Tom's eyes too loud. I slipped outside to the porch, the summer air warm against my skin. The lake shimmered under the moon, and I sat on the steps, trying to make sense of what I'd felt. That's when I heard the creak of the screen door. Tom stepped out, a beer in hand, his silhouette dark against the porch light. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. He sat beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. My heart pounded, but I managed to nod. We didn't talk about what happened earlier, but it hung between us, unspoken, undeniable. "You're a good kid, Ethan," he said finally, staring out at the lake. "You've got a big heart. Don't let this town crush it." His words hit harder than they should have. Like he saw something in me I hadn't dared show anyone. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my throat closed up. Instead, I just sat there, feeling the weight of his presence, the pull of something I wasn't ready to name. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur. Jake and I fished, swam, and pretended everything was normal. But every time Tom was near, I felt it had magnetic pull, that dangerous spark. I caught him watching me once, when he thought I wasn't looking, and the look in his eyes wasn't fatherly. It was hungry. When I left for home, Tom shook my hand, his grip firm, lingering a second too long. "Come back anytime, Ethan," he said, and I swear his voice carried a promise. I drove away with my heart in my throat, knowing I'd never see him the same way again. Summer bled into fall, and I started college at Virginia Tech, a few hours from home. The distance didn't dull the memory of Tom's eyes. If anything, it sharpened it, carving it deeper into my mind. I threw myself into classes, joined the campus LGBTQ club in secret, and tried to move on. But every guy I met, every fleeting crush bailed against the image of Tom standing in that doorway. Jake and I stayed close, texting daily, but I avoided the lake house. I told myself it was because of school, but the truth was I was scared. Scared of what I'd felt, scared of what it meant, scared of seeing Tom again and knowing it wasn't just in my head. Then came Thanksgiving break, and Jake insisted I come back. "Dad's been asking about you," he said, casual, oblivious. My stomach flipped. The lake house felt different in November. The air crisp, the trees bare. Tom greeted me with a handshake. Same as always, but his eyes held that same fire. It was like no time had passed. Jake was his usual self, dragging me out to chop wood or fix the dock. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom was watching me. Not in a creepy way, just aware. Like he was seeing me for the first time. One night, after Jake passed out on the couch, Tom and I ended up alone in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, forearms flexing in a way that made it hard to focus. I offered to help, grabbing a towel to dry. Our hands brushed again, and this time, he didn't pull away. "You've changed, Ethan," he said, not looking at me. "You're not the kid I used to know." "I'm still me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just figuring things out." He turned then, his eyes searching mine. "Yeah, what are you figuring out?" The question wasn't casual. It was a challenge, a dare. My heart raced, and for a moment, I thought about telling him everything, how I'd known I was gay for years, how his look that summer had unraveled me, how I couldn't stop thinking about him. But fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I mumbled something about college and fled to the guest room. That night, I dreamed of him, his hands, his voice, the way he'd looked at me. I woke up sweating, guilt and desire tangled in my chest. He was Jake's dad. He was twice my age. This was wrong, impossible, dangerous. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like the only thing that made sense. The next day, Tom asked me to help him fix the boat shed. Jake was out with friends, so it was just us, the cold November air biting at our knuckles. We worked in silence at first, passing tools, our breaths visible in the chill. Then he spoke. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked, hammering a nail into place. "Like you're following a script you didn't write?" I stopped, my hands shaking. "All the time," I admitted. "Like I'm supposed to be someone I'm not." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something raw in his eyes, pain, longing, maybe even fear. "I've been doing that for years, Ethan," he said, "since before Jake was born." My breath caught. Was he saying what I thought he was? I wanted to ask, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded, and we kept working, the tension between us thick enough to choke on. When our hands brushed again, passing a wrench, I didn't pull away. Neither did he. That night, I overheard him and Jake arguing. Jake's voice was sharp, accusing. You're different, Dad. Ever since summer, you've been off. Tom's response was low, too quiet to hear, but it sent a shiver down my spine. Did Jake suspect something? Did he see what I saw in Tom's eyes? The rest of the break was a tightrope walk. I caught Tom watching me, his gaze lingering longer each time. Once, when Jake wasn't looking, he rested his hand on my shoulder, his thumb brushing the back of my neck. It was a small gesture, but it set my skin on fire. I wanted to lean into it, to cross that line, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if this ruined everything? When I left for college again, Tom pulled me aside. You're always welcome here, Ethan, he said, his voice low, his hand gripping mine. No matter what. I nodded, unable to speak, and drove away with my heart pounding. I knew I couldn't keep running from this. Not forever. Winter came, and with it, a restless ache I couldn't shake. College was a blur of exams and parties. But Tom's face haunted May's eyes. His voice, the way his touch lingered like a bruise I didn't want to heal. I dated a guy from the LGBTQ club, a sweet artist named Ryan. But it felt hollow. Every kiss, every touch, was measured against a memory I couldn't let go. Jake noticed something was off. We Skyped one night. His face pixelated, but his worry clear. You're not yourself, man, he said. What's going on? I wanted to tell him God. I wanted to, but how do you tell your best friend you're falling for his dad? Instead, I lied, said it was stress, and changed the subject. Spring break loomed, and Jake invited me back to the lake house. I almost said no, but the pull was too strong. I needed to see Tom, to know if what I'd felt was real or just a fantasy I'd built in my head. When I arrived, the air was thick with the scent of blooming dogwoods, and Tom was there, waiting on the porch, his smile tight but warm. The first few days were careful, polite. Tom kept his distance. But I caught him watching Muhen. I was helping Jake with the grill. When I was reading by the lake, his eyes held that same intensity. But there was something new in them now, resolve. Like he'd made a decision he wasn't ready to share. One night, after Jake went to bed, Tom found me on the dock, staring at the water. The moon was full, casting silver across the lake. He sat beside me, closer than he needed to, and my heart thundered. We need to talk, Ethan, he said, his voice low, steady. About that day last summer. I froze, my throat dry. What about it? He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. I saw you. Not just you changing. I saw you, and it scared the hell out of me. My breath hitched. Why? Because I've spent my whole life pretending, he said, his voice cracking, pretending to be someone I'm not. And then you walked into my house, and I couldn't pretend anymore. I stared at him, my heart pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it. Tom, I don't. He cut me off, his hand brushing mine, sending sparks through me. Not yet. I need you to know this isn't easy for me. I'm twice your age. Ethan. I'm Jake's dad. It's complicated. Complicated doesn't mean wrong, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. His eyes widened, and for a moment, we just sat there, the space between us electric. Then he leaned in, just a fraction, and I thought he might kiss me. But he pulled back, standing abruptly. I need time, he said, his voice rough. We both do. He walked away, leaving me on the dock, my heart a tangled mess of hope and fear. The rest of the week was torture. Every glance, every accidental touch, felt like a promise and a warning. Jake was oblivious, but I saw the strain in Tom's face, the way he held himself like a man on the edge. When I left, Tom hugged me goodbye, his arms lingering longer than they should have. Be careful, Ethan, he whispered, and I knew he wasn't talking about the drive. I nodded, my throat tight, and drove away with 1,000 unsaid words burning in my chest. Summer came again, and with it, a reckoning. I was 19 now, older, surer of who I was. I'd come out to my mom, who hugged me and said she'd always known. But Jake didn't know, and neither did Tom, not officially. I couldn't keep living in halves, so I accepted Jake's invite to the lake house, knowing this time I wouldn't run. Tom was different when I arrived, quieter, but not distant. There was a purpose in his eyes, like he'd been waiting for me. Jake noticed it too, his brow furrowing when Tom and I exchanged looks. "You guys are weird this year," he said, half joking, but I saw the unease in his eyes. One afternoon, while Jake was out fishing, Tom and I ended up alone in the garage, sorting through old tools. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin hum. I dropped a wrench, and when we both reached for it, our hands collided. This time, neither of us pulled away. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, urgent. "I can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" I asked, though I knew. "Pretending I don't feel something," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "Pretending I don't want you." My heart stopped, then surged. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. "Then don't pretend," I said, my voice barely a whisper. For a moment, I thought he'd pull away again. But then he kissed me hard, desperate, like a man who'd been holding his breath for years. It was fire and relief and everything I dreamed of. My hands found his face, his neck, and he groaned against my lips, pulling me closer. We broke apart, breathless, and the weight of what we'd done crashed over me. "What about Jake?" I whispered. Tom's face darkened. "He can't know?" "Not yet." We stole moments after that, kisses in the shed, touches when Jake wasn't looking. It was reckless, dangerous, but it felt like freedom. I was falling for him, hard and fast, and I could see it in his eyes too, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. But secrets don't stay buried. One night, Jake walked in on us in the kitchen, my hand on Tom's arm, our faces too close. He froze, his eyes wide with shock, then betrayal. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Jake," I started, but he cut me off. "You're my best friend, Ethan." "And you," he turned to Tom, his face crumpling. "You're my dad." Tom stepped forward, his hands raised. "Jake, let me explain." "Explain what?" Jake shouted. "That you're sneaking around with my best friend. That you're—" He stopped, the word catching in his throat. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I looked at Tom, my heart breaking. "What do we do?" He ran a hand through his hair, his face etched with pain. "We tell him the truth," he said. "No more hiding." The next morning, Jake wouldn't look at me. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his coffee, while Tom and I stood across from him, the air heavy with guilt and hope. I wanted to reach for Tom's hand, but I didn't. "Not yet." "Jake," Tom started, his voice steady but raw. "I'm in love with Ethan." The words hit like a thunderclap. Jake's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "You're what?" "I love him," Tom repeated, his gaze unwavering. "I've spent my whole life hiding who I am, and I'm done. I'm done pretending." I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Jake, I love him too. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it did, and I'm not sorry." Jake's face twisted, anger, hurt, confusion. "You're my best friend," he said, his voice breaking. "How could you do this?" "I didn't choose it," I said. "It just happened. But I'm not going to lie about who I am anymore. Not to you. Not to anyone." He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need time," he said, and walked out. The days that followed were agony. Jake avoided us, staying with a friend in town. Tom and I talked, cried, held each other. We knew we'd hurt him, But we also knew we couldn't go back. Our love was real. Messy. Complicated. But real. A week later, Jake came back. He looked tired, but calmer. "I don't get it," he said, sitting across from us. "I don't know if I ever will. But you're my dad, and you're my best friend. I don't want to lose you." Tears stung my eyes. "You won't," I said. "I swear." Tom reached for Jake's hand. "I'm still your dad. That'll never change." Jake nodded, his jaw tight. "Just don't lie to me again. Okay." We promised. And slowly, we started to rebuild. It wasn't easy. Jake needed space, and the town whispered when word got out. But Tom and I faced it together. We moved to Richmond, found a community that accepted us, and built a life. Jake visited. Awkward at first, but over time, he softened. He even brought a boyfriend to dinner one night. A quiet guy who made him smile. Years later, at our wedding, Jake stood as my best man. His toast was short but heartfelt. "You two taught me what love looks like," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's real." Tom's hand found mine under the table, his grip warm and sure. The look he gave me that day, standing in a suit with gray streaking his hair, burned brighter than the one from years ago. It was love, fierce and unapologetic, and it was ours. We'd fought for it against fear, against shame, against a world that told us we shouldn't exist. And in that fight, we found something worth more than acceptance: truth. The truth of who we are, who we love, and the family we built. Not despite the odds, but because of them.